Now, the stage is set for day 2 of the National Dialogue Convention in Pretoria this morning. Yesterday, President Cyril Ramaphosa delivered the opening address calling for a non-partisan process and encouraging citizens to engage with the upcoming countrywide talks. Ramaphosa took a swipe at foundations which pulled out of the process, saying they would be missing out. Chaos ensued yesterday when a member of the Khoisan community took to stage demanding to be included in that first panel presentation. Let's get some analysis on the process so far with Central University of Technology lecturer Leeto Nthoba. Nthoba, thank you so much for your time and for joining us this morning. How would you evaluate the overall effectiveness of the National Dialogues Convention Day 1 in just fostering constructive political discourse and also just the tone that has been set on the first day?
Good morning, Katla, and good morning to the viewers. I've always been a skeptic of the process that they're putting forward. And again, even with the gripe that you're talking about, the disagreement between them and the Khoisan community leader wanting to be on the panel, the way in which the national dialogue is taking place almost seems to be an exclusive process in the first place, right? It doesn't seem to be a national dialogue convention. It seems to be a proximity to national leaders convention. And thus, the problem then that comes about is that how are the delegates who are there chosen? How do you break up into the different commissions? Because it seems on the other level as well, that each person who was brought there as a delegate had certain restrictions that they could go to, or so certain places they could go to, and certain themes they could attend to primarily, and then could go to others. It means that you're restricted, even though, let's assume this morning you guys had the leader of Abahlali Basemjondolo, right? His plight on housing is intrinsically linked to his plight to poverty and intergenerational poverty. So how is he then only constrained to one forum and not the other? And so that for me is problematic, but also the way in which it's happening, right? The normal South African is not going to have access to their day 1 or day 2 unless they go to bum rush the stage like the Khoisan leader did. Because if you think about it, if a person from a poor community in the Free State wants to go have a say, somebody from Welkom, let's say, right? They'd have to travel for 4 hours to the convention center and then not have the credentials to go in. And so how then is this a dialogue for everyone? And why would everyone want to bother to be in the dialogue in the first place? And so a few problems arise when you start to conceptualize it, as well as that the dialogue is starting lopsided. They want it to be citizen-led, yet the government has not responded or has not taken part in the dialogue yet, because society dialogues with government every day. They have not given us the answers to problems we've presented to them yet they want more dialogue.
I mean, you speak of it being an exclusive process, and some civil society organizations have already put out a joint statement. In fact, like you mentioned, Abahlali Basemjondolo, a thesis, equal education, my vote counts, quite a number of them saying that they're here to disrupt and drift towards, or rather disrupt any drift towards a state or NGO-centric process, and rather to ensure a grassroots voice-centered kind of approach. Do you think that we are not organized as citizens? I mean, if you make an example of that person who is out in the Free State and wants their voices heard, should the process perhaps have started with a call to action to say to people, group yourselves, so that when you do send a representative to this dialogue, then your voice is included there? And do you think that this dialogue in any way has successfully included maybe a diverse range of those political views?
So if you think about it, the call for the dialogue itself came from the top down. They told us that we need to have a dialogue. They agreed with each other after the elections. When signing the GNU, one of the core principles on the agreement that they have is that they need to have a national dialogue, meaning that this national dialogue is not a call from the people on the ground. The people on the ground already have issues, for instance, that they have coalesced around, And some of those issues aren't even being answered by the convention anyway. Firstly, we already have an issue on gender-based violence. How are you going to deal with that? How are you going to deal with the issue on intergenerational poverty? How are you going to deal with education, especially the higher education sector? How are you going to deal with unemployment? People have been asking these questions of government already. The government hasn't replied. And so that's why I'm saying there's a lopsided approach, because the government has already been asked questions. There are pre-existing problems that the government has not even bothered to deal with. And then from there, decide to compound the problem by then saying to people, oh, come and dialogue with us around an issue. Some of the issues even the government have identified. 2 weeks ago, for instance, we saw how dismal Free State municipalities are with money and calling themselves special and making a mockery out of the parliamentary process. From that process alone, government had the prerogative to act and act on behalf of citizens. Instead, they then called the citizens to a dialogue about the dialogue they had with the government. And this is the problem, is that we are dialoguing on top of dialogue, trying to seek a solution, which is not there. In fact, what is happening here, like any other national dialogue that's happened all around the world, is either there's a stagnation, there's a huge crisis that we were trying to avert, or we're trying to get political legitimacy, right? One, there is no huge crisis. We're in no huge stagnation that the politicians can't negate or get out of, because we have National Treasury, we have all of these other bodies that are still functional. So this is in fact an act of trying to get political legitimacy, because the GNU is actually a hugely confusing moment, not just for us, the citizens, but also the politicians, because now they're in a mixed mandate. They don't know what we are demanding because they've been ignoring our calls for so long. And so our voices at the ballot box are now mixed because of that. And now they want to get some kind of legitimacy coming outside of the process that we do when we vote. They want to hear extra voices on why the vote is as it was, trying to get them to coalesce.
And in hearing those extra voices, I mean, the president has been having the presidential imbizos, which focus on a myriad of issues, and he's been crisscrossing the country and having those sit-downs with communities and having those conversations. How different is this national dialogue going to be from whatever inputs have been put into those imbizos? Are we seeing the impact? Are we putting that into policy and saying that these are the grievances of South Africans and therefore this is how we're moving forward?
Well, the imbizos were actually even more confronting, right? In certain places where the president went, literally, the roads were being fixed under his feet as he was passing along, right? The potholes were so bad in certain municipalities that they literally had to start scraping up dirt from the sides of the roads as he passed by. And he even commented on that. And so then why does he need a national dialogue to complete some of these things, or ask his comrades to complete some of these things? The biggest problem that we're facing in South Africa now is that we're in a moment of inaction. Our president seems to be devoid of ideas that could go counter to his political comrades. So what he's trying to do is to legitimize the decisions he's supposed to take that are harsh on his comrades, but good for the society. Because now we're at a precipice where the political class in South Africa is coming to loggerheads with the people that they're claiming to govern. Not just the ANC, but everyone in general, because the people on the ground have been asking for certain things. They have not been delivering these things. In order to deliver the things that are needed by the people, they need then to take out their patronage networks. They need to fire the people who got them into the conferences, and where they then became presidents or premiers or all of these things. And so those are the biggest problems, is that they are refusing to take the steps without us being their backup voice. So they need us to go to these national dialogues and say, please fire mayor such and such, and please fire premier such and such, because he's not doing his job. And then only will he try to take action on the things, because most of the time we dialogue, we commission, we do all of these things, and the president actually never takes any steps towards gratifying the people anyway.
I mean, just on that point, the president spoke about a social compact. And don't you think maybe this national dialogue is really aimed in shifting the mindset? Because with the social compact that the president spoke about yesterday was saying that the onus is on all of us, each and every single citizen within the country. It's up to us to find the problems and fix the country together. Do you think this is not maybe a time for us, like you're saying, to identify the problems and be quite deliberate with saying this mayor is not delivering and we want him out?
But the onus is not on us. Let's make that clear. There are people who get paid money to give us the direction, then to give us the onus, right? If government is directionless, you can't expect the populace then to have a bigger direction than the governing class. That's why we choose them to govern in the first place. We are saying from the many, one. And then when you are there at the top, give us ideas on how to best navigate an issue, right? Because when you give society a voice and say, how do you try to navigate the thing, you get something like fees must fall. It's the only way in which students know how to communicate a broader message, not just to government, but to all universities, to say, the way in which you are charging us fees, we believe is unfair because of the country's history, but because of the importance of education in this country. When they do that, what did the government address them with? One, they address them with an imbizo or with threats of arrest. And so when that happens, it means that society must wait. And that's the message that they've been telling us. The Marikana strikers, right? They did that. They said, we're not getting enough money. Help us. We're drowning in worker poverty. What did they do? They got shot on the spot. Meaning the government is rebuffing you. They are saying, wait for us to give you the way. And ever since those tragedies, both of them, there's not been a direction given by government. And then the government comes back and says the onus is on us. No, the onus isn't on us. The citizens have already tried to tell you what their problems are, have already tried to act on their problems. You shot them, you arrested them. And so now it's time for the government to come up with the ideas in which the people must follow in earnest. So they must earn their keep. They must not keep saying the onus is on us. The onus is not on the citizens. If they are the leaders and they have to take charge.
Then how differently should active citizenry then be implemented if we are saying that we should only then just leave it to government? Because I think people have left it to government for the last 31 years, but we're sitting with the problems that we are facing. You're seeing now that March and Operation Tudula have taken it upon themselves, the onus to ensure that they walk into clinics and fix a dilapidated health system. How differently then should people be implementing their own active citizenry in ensuring that government is held accountable?
Exactly. I love the fact that you reference those two groups. That is an unled citizen group or unled citizen action. Because in trying to fix dilapidated health systems, what they then do is target innocent people who are there and are sick because they don't have documentation or are assumed not to have documentation. See what an unled citizen action does? It's not focused on the issue at hand. They don't focus on how the system is dilapidated. They don't try to hold the government to account. What they do is they attack their fellow man on the ground and try to say they are the problem. But if it was a led solution to say, right, if you are near a clinic, please go and volunteer as a porter. Please go and volunteer to cut the grass. And when the finances are ready, we as the government will try to remunerate you. Now you are saying you're putting citizens to action. And citizens can only act in the place in which they encompass, because we don't encompass all areas. So as an educator, I can only try my best to be at the university. And my other best is to maybe have homework classes for high school students, try to entice them and show them the importance of education. But I need more guidance on how to make that a broader message. I can't take it on by myself because I don't have the resources, but I also don't have the time to do that. And so in then trying to bring other educators together might create a situation where we are creating a parallel education system away from the government's vision. And that's why it needs to be led by those in government. And when it's done that way, it's policy led, it has research attached to it, and it also has legal legitimacy. Because sometimes the things that we're doing are not in the legal boundaries, even though we're trying to do the best. So now the way to heaven the way to hell would be paved with good intentions, and that's what we don't want as citizens. When you lead well, then the people will follow well as well, and then they'll fall in place and do what they have to do. When you don't do that, the people then run amok and then create their own parallel systems that might be dangerous for the society as a whole.